Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Happy to see all of you here. It's a rainy morning, right? But hey, we made it. And those of you who are visiting from Tennessee, from Mount Juliet, we welcome you. May God bless you. And also from Minnesota. I long to be there once, hopefully in the future. I've never been to Minnesota, so hopefully I will make that trip with my family. We are just so blessed to have you here. And anyway, for me, the subject of the Lord's Supper, and we've been looking at churches in the shape of Scripture, and those from Tennessee may be familiar with the name Dane Chambers from the Church of Christ in Concord Road. And he wrote this book, and we've been looking at the different chapters and different titles, and one of those is the communion, the Lord's Supper. And last week, I was talking about how we do it and some of those ideas that we have about how we do it. I was having a conversation this week with a good friend of mine. He's not a member of the church. He doesn't come here. You may not know him, but he's a good friend of mine, and we were having coffee one of those mornings. We just happened to be at Starbucks, and this is not a commercial for Starbucks, but I'm letting you know where we were. And so we were having coffee, and I asked him, because I was preparing this lesson, and I was like, so, what is your idea of the Lord's Supper? I mean, he's a believer. He's just not like, he doesn't believe exactly kind of like how we believe. And I was really interested to see what he thought and what he said. And he said, well, I've been to churches where, they do it this way and they do it that way. And I was, okay, I see that, I've heard that. And then he said, well, I've been to churches where only members of that church take it. And I was like, oh, now it's getting a little bit more interesting. And he said, I've been to churches where only baptized people take the Lord's Supper. And he kept talking now, and we just had a great conversation. And I was thinking about this text because last week I presented to you Luke 15. And in Luke 15, verses 11 to 32, we have the story that we call the prodigal son, even though there are two sons, right? And the father has two sons. That's what Jesus says in Luke 15:11. There were two sons, not just one son. And I talked to you about the younger son, the one who leaves and the one who comes back. And the attitude that I wanted to portray last week was about how to take the Lord's Supper in the mindset or in the perspective of being that type of person, a prodigal son, which we have all been in that scenario. And not that we have all eaten with pigs, probably not. But we've been, in a spiritual sense, that prodigal son. And we've come back to God. And when we take the Lord's Supper, we really don't deserve that. And so, following up on that, because I obviously didn't have enough time to cover all of the chapter, we pick up today on verse 25. And it says, now his older son was in the field. As he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he summoned one of the servants, questioning what these things meant. Your brother is here, he told him, and your father has slaughtered the fattened calf, because he has him back safe and sound. And so the first thing that I identify here is that there is an issue. In these verses, it seems like there is an issue. We don't know yet what the issue is, but if you've read the story, you know this older brother has an issue with this. Now, for me, there are three things to this issue, but the issue that I identify with the brother. Not the same issue that the brother identified, but the issue that I identify, and is this. Number one, there's unfamiliar music and dancing. Now, we know, if you're a member of the Church of Christ, most likely, music and dancing are not part of our disciplines for worship, for God. And we may say that was more Old Testament, that was more David, that was more Psalms. But in your spiritual life, and that's all I want to say, in your spiritual life, in your heart with God, in your relationship with God, I hope that there is music and dancing. Do you understand what I'm saying? Not the physical act of musical and dancing if you're uncomfortable with that, but the spiritual sense of it. There's spiritual people, there are Christians that lack a spiritual heart that is familiar with music and dancing, with joy. And when this brother comes back from work, because he was out in the field working for his father in his fatherland, and of course we understand the idea of Christians, we go to work, we go to evangelize. But some people say this is work. This is not a party. This is not about music and dancing. No. There's unfamiliar music and dancing. He asked the question, what is going on? He heard music and he heard dancing and he's like, I'm not used to that. I'm not used to this music, this dancing. What is going on? And part of the problem that we may face as Christians is this. When we talk about the Lord's Supper, and this lesson basically applies to so many things beyond the Lord's Supper. But whenever we have a person that comes back, that used to be our brother, or used to be our sister, or is just someone who's visiting us, who's not a member of the church, if there is music and dancing, that means if there is rejoicing, if there is happiness, if there is joy, because somebody came back, and that makes us uncomfortable, then we may have an issue. Not because there's really an issue, but because we could be the issue. You see that? And so there's unfamiliar music and dancing, and then there's an unexpected guest, a returnee. This worker tells the older brother, he says, your brother is here. He is back safe. He is sound. This is good news, right? The prodigal son came back. This is good news when we read the whole story. But in the shoes of the older brother, he was not expecting that. He was not expecting the brother to come back. And it kind of leads me to the question. If somebody left the church, let's say a long time ago, I don't know if this has happened, like in your spiritual life. So I'm not referring to any particular scenario that you may have in your heads, but if somebody left the church and they come back, is that person an unexpected guest for you? Or were you ready to welcome them back? Because this brother was not ready. He was not ready to welcome the brother back. And so that's part of the issue. And the third thing that I see there is an issue is that there is an unusual sacrifice for him. This worker says, your father has slaughtered the fattened calf. This is what throws off the big brother. The older brother was not expecting his brother to come back. The big brother was not expecting for there to be music and dancing and rejoicing. And so the younger brother comes back, and the older brother now hears that there is an unusual sacrifice for them, for the ones who are returning. In this case, a younger brother. And it leads me definitely to think about the Lord's Supper. Why? Because this was a sacrifice. But this was a great sacrifice for you and for me and for everyone out there and for whoever wants to come back. Amen? I say like, amen. This is a sacrifice. It's not a usual sacrifice. It's an unusual sacrifice that Jesus died for us. And some people have an issue with that. Some people don't have an issue with the great sacrifice, but some people say others don't deserve it. And there's an issue with that thought, with that idea, with that mindset, with that heart. And I've been on that side. Because let's just read the next 3 verses. Then he became angry and didn't want to go in. So his father came out and pleaded with him. But he replied to his father, look, that first word is like a word that you don't think a son would talk to the father like that, right? I mean, you don't see the Wilson kids talking like that to their parents, right? Because they always say, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, right? He says, look, I have been slaving many years for you. I can only imagine when Noah is older and he may say to me, look, wait a minute. Look, I have been slaving many years for you. And I have never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me a goat so that I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came, who has devoured your assets with prostitutes, you slaughtered the fattened calf for him. And here we see the wrong attitude. And the wrong attitude usually has a lot of whys. Why? I have 3 whys for you that this brother portrays. The first one is, why should I participate with them? I don't know if this has ever been your attitude. And sadly, I'm here in front of you and I'm just preaching because this assignment was given to me to preach about the Lord's Supper, and I've never preached about the Lord's Supper using Luke 15, so this is the first time, but there's a lot of feelings here because I've been on that side. I remember in Costa Rica, where we're from, and I was working there with the church, and one of my good friends, he disappeared for a few months. He was working with us. I mean, not like a full-time work, but he was serving. And then one day he just appeared back in the fellowship, in worship. And one Sunday went by, the next Sunday went by. And you know what I realize now? Probably I didn't realize then. But you know what I was expecting? The whole time I was sitting there in the seats or in the pews, I was asking myself, when is this guy going to come forward? That was my thought. When is he going to come forward? When is he going to ask for forgiveness? That's a wrong attitude. I'm sorry. Why? So the brother here says, why should I participate with him? Why? So he became angry and refused to go in. Other versions say he refused. He didn't go in. He didn't want to go in. Why? Because he said, why should I eat with him? He left the house. He's not worthy. So I cannot contaminate myself eating with him. And the father pleaded with him. And the father here, of course, is like God is pleading with us and saying, let it go. Come on in. Eat with him. Drink with him. But the attitude, the wrong attitude is, why should I? The second why is, why such a small sacrifice for me? So he says, look, I have been slaving. He uses the word slaving. And that's how a lot of people see Christianity. You're a slave. And one day you're going to get your freedom. Well, I've been slaving. And of course, there are many verses. And we can go to Paul and all the letters where he talks about we're slaves of Jesus. Yeah. But I have been slaving many years for you. And I have never disobeyed your orders. Therefore, I deserve something. You see the problem? I deserve at least a goat. And so, why such a small sacrifice for me? And we cannot treat this, the Lord's Supper, the symbolism of the sacrifice of Jesus, a fattened calf for us, we cannot treat it as a small sacrifice for me. That's what he does. And the third why is, why such a great sacrifice for them? It's not just that there was a sacrifice for the brother. This was a fattened calf. The fattened calf. It was a calf that had been waiting for a great party. And so he says, but when this son of yours, and look at that phrase. I have 3 younger brothers, right? If I talk to my parents about one of them, I would say, my brother Nathan, or my brother Jacobo, or my brother John Gabriel. But you know, if I was really upset and I wanted to take my parents off, I would probably say, your son, right? Because it cuts the relationship that we have, and now is your problem, is your son. It's not my brother any longer. I'm not referring to him like that. And that's what he does. But when this son of yours came, who has devoured your assets with prostitutes, you did that sacrifice for him. And that's a problem that we may have. If somebody walks in here and we don't know, are we checking the boxes? Is he a member of the church? Is she not? Should they participate? Should they not? And it kind of bothers me to think that if I had the plate, and I'm not doing the plates today, I know other men are doing the plates, and I know they won't do this, but I'm just giving you a hypothetical example. If I took the plate and I went over and I looked at someone and I said, I don't think you can take this, you know, and I skipped that person, and it's just an example. It's kind of like this. Sorry, the sacrifice was not for you. Or at least not yet. Because it seems like you don't deserve it yet. It seems like you haven't earned the right to participate. And if you participate, I may not want to participate with you. And go back to the otherwise. And so we get to the last 2 verses. The father says, son, you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we have to celebrate and rejoice, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And here we see the right attitude. In these verses, in the last 2 verses, we see the right attitude. And a lot of the right attitude has to do with treatment. You can say, hey, you know, I did it with the best intention. Yeah, you can have the best intention and yet treat others awfully. Or at least you can say you had the best intention and treat others in a really bad way. So a lot of the right attitude has to do with the treatment that you give others. And so, how are we supposed to treat others? And this is what I want to take as practical as we can for the Lord's Supper and for basically every discipline that we have. we treat them as welcome. The Father says, we had to celebrate and rejoice. If somebody shows up today, somebody visits us for the first time, they're not a member of the church, they don't go to any church, they just happen to look for Jesus and they happen to be here. And we don't show them that we are celebrating and rejoicing because they're here, they're probably not going to feel welcome. Have you ever felt like that? If you ever visited a congregation or a church, like you went somewhere and you didn't feel welcome? Have you ever felt on the other side, like, oh, I probably made a mistake and I didn't make them feel welcome? Has that happened to you? And I know there are circumstances and there are different perspectives, but here, the Father says we had to celebrate and rejoice. We had to treat your brother as he is welcome, because he is welcome. See, our whole purpose of evangelizing people is to show them that God is welcoming them, even though none of us deserve it, right? That is the whole thing. Second, not only do we treat them as welcome, but we treat them as family. And so the Father says, this brother of yours, you remember verse 30? This son of yours, not my brother, this son of yours. And the Father now says, this brother of yours. And I know a lot of people may say, well, Dave, what about 1 Corinthians 5? You shouldn't eat with them, what Paul says in that context of that man who was living with his father's wife and all of that. That is very specific. That is very specific and very unusual. And we cannot use 1 Corinthians 5 for everything. We cannot just take it out of context and treat everybody like that. Well, I shouldn't eat with them. I shouldn't have fellowship with them. The moment you start treating others as family and they feel welcome, they're going to say, wow, is this the God that they worship? A God that welcomes me? Someone who spiritually was eating with pigs? Someone that shouldn't come here and ask for anything? And so the Father says, this brother of yours, we treat them as family. And not only do we do that, but we treat them as saved. The Father says, this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. He is saved. And that's how we should treat others. If we have a brother or sister or someone that showed up today, but we treat them as saved, that changes so many things. Perhaps you feel like you are saved. In a minute, we're going to sing this amazing song. It's called Amazing Grace. Many of us know it, probably even by heart, and we've sang it for years. And the first stanza says, Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. And that is very humble. But what if we changed the last word for a minute, just for this thought? What if we, instead of me, said them? All the people that are around you, all the brothers and sisters that are around you, even the people that have left, the people that can come back if we expect them to come back someday, the people that you may have had a conflict with lately. What if you sang like this? And I'm not asking Brother Bob to sing it this way, but just for the purpose of the illustration. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like them. That is God. That is Jesus. Jesus is talking in Luke 15. Jesus is the fattened calf. Jesus is the sacrifice. And that sacrifice saved a wretch like me. Yes, because I was a wretch and I'm still working on it. But saved a wretch like them. And that changes so many things, because that's when I start to treat them differently. That's where I have more peace, more mercy, more patience, more kindness, more love, more joy, all the fruits of the Spirit. Perhaps you have been saved and you think you are there, you're saved, and that is great. If you haven't been saved, we can talk about it. We can definitely have a conversation about that. But if you think that you've been saved and you've been acting like the older brother, today is a good time to come to the Father and say, I need help. I don't deserve this. I'm asking for things that I don't deserve. I'm treating others the way they shouldn't be treated, and I need help. I hope this lesson is applicable to you as it is to me. Thank you for your time, and may God bless you.